I don't consider the first 18 years of my life to be of any value. It's only after I graduated and went off on my own, and especially the Marine Corps gave me a basis from which to mature, to improve, to focus. I had none of that in my first 18 years of life.
Welcome back to Everyone Has a Story, true tales from everyday life, and we're so glad that you are here. Well, this story is about Kevin, a young country boy from a town deep in the mountains of West Virginia who made his journey via the United States Marine Corps to the Castro district in San Francisco, and his journey from politician and businessman and banker to his meeting Paul and becoming an entrepreneur and having spent the next 20 years of their life creating art and antiques. Well, it's his story. Let him tell it to you. But I want to remind you that he told me that you always need to take risks. And while you're doing it, smile a lot.
Fairmont is up in hilly country. It's beautiful country up there. I love visiting my brother and sister who still live there in Fairmont. I was in second grade when first time we moved to Florida, right on the beach. And we three kids, I want to tell you, my brother and sister and I, we were in heaven being on a beach. We loved water. I don't care if it was a stream, a brook, a river, we loved water. And our parents taught us to swim in West Virginia, and really cold water, really cold water. So we didn't care what the temperature was in that ocean. In fact, it was just warm to us, you know. But then my mother wanted to go back to West Virginia, which we did. But fortunately for us kids, they for some reason got a trailer. The trailer park was surrounded on three sides by a large creek. When I say large, it was a fishing creek, a swimming creek, you know, everything you can think of. And we, all three of us, still once in a while go back to look at that creek because we had so much fun at that place. But then they decided to return to Florida. My dad got an offer with Martin Marietta in Orlando. This is pre-Disney, when Orlando was nice. So I was in fifth grade. So from fifth grade on, I finished elementary school, I did high school, and I did college. And I spent all that time in Florida. So. Joined the Marines right out of high school in June of 1966. That was my ticket away from what I considered to be a very dysfunctional parental duo. I don't consider the first 18 years of my life to be of any value. It's only after I graduated and went off on my own, and especially the Marine Corps gave me a basis from which to mature, to improve, to focus. I had none of that in my first 18 years of life. It also was my only way I knew that I was ever go to college. My parents didn't have money. I certainly didn't, and I didn't have the grades to get a scholarship. You know, I was a lazy student. I loved the Marine Corps. I fit in so well, and I was only in 14 months. 3 of those months were in Balboa Hospital, Naval Hospital in San Diego. I'm sure you've read of all the stuff from Camp Lejeune, with the poisonings, and it wasn't just in the water, it was in the air as well. And chronic bronchitis and chronic pansinusitis were two of the biggies, and I got both at the same time. And I was sick as a dog by the time I got to San Diego. But I worked. I've never been the lazy guy that takes advantage of, oh, I'm sick. No. By the end of the 14th month, I was up to E4. And it was a fairly sizable group of Marines, most of them privates and E1s and E2s. And I started off as an E2. They put me in charge of that group and just, give me the armband, NCOIC armband. I replaced a lieutenant. They had a little problem with not desertion, but AWOL, because the lieutenant pulled stuff like not allowing a Marine to go home to go to his mother's funeral. For some reason, I got chosen. I have no clue why, I'll be honest with you. But I got my next promotion due to what I was able to do with that group. And there were no AWOLs after that, none, zero. And then I was up for E4 just as I was being discharged from medical. But there's a caveat to that. Within a month or two after I got discharged, Office of Naval Intelligence started looking into the homosexual problem and started kicking people out without benefits, dishonorable discharges. I mean, it was horrible. And I knew a couple of them very well. Somebody up there decided we don't need homos. So, So I was very glad that I got that discharge, because I would have been out. Just suspicion. One more follow-up on that. I was in college, and the Office of Naval Intelligence asked me to come in for an interview. And this is before they got rid of the chaplain. And they asked me about him and other people, and I refused to tell them anything. And they threatened me, said, we'll take your VA benefits, we'll make sure you can't go to college, yada, yada. We'll leave you in this room to think about it, then maybe you'll talk to us. Well, I spent the time waiting, looking at the maps. I was happy to look at the maps. UCFE, MVE. And they've just finally said, go, because I wasn't telling them anything.
We hope you're enjoying this video. There is so much more footage of this interview than we were able to show you here on YouTube. If you would like to see the entire unedited video of this and all our other interviews, please check us out on Patreon. Your support allows us to continue sourcing, recording, and producing extraordinary life stories from everyday people like Kevin. Thank you so much. We're so glad you're here.
Well, when I came back, when I got out, I decided to go junior college route first. And I met Blake Mason, among others. Blake and I became the best of friends. And he is, quite honestly, the first straight friend whom I came to love. Such a blessing, a true blessing. But Blake and I, we were founding fathers of the college's largest fraternity, Delta Beta Pi, which still has reunions. I missed it because I was sick in March, the 55th anniversary. I was so furious with my body, When I was asked to choose a major, in college, I had no clue what I wanted to do. But I knew that communicating would be key to anything I did in the future. I know the English language well. I had already taken speech classes. I knew how to speak to other people, whether it be one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-300. So I chose communication. And my dad was still at Martin Marietta. He called me one day and said, there's a guy here who wants to run for Florida House of Representatives and needs a campaign manager, and I've recommended you. You want to take this on? And I did. That's the first one I ran of quite a few. So his name was Harvey, and I took over for him and wrote his speeches, wrote his press releases, wrote the radio, wrote and designed the newspaper ads for the Orlando Sentinel. Well, the Orlando Sentinel and the TV station evidently were tracking what I was doing for him because he was a challenger, and he won. He beat the heck out of this incumbent. The Orlando Sentinel was owned by Martin Anderson at the time. They took a view of me and tracked me through college. Anyway, I got to meet Martin Anderson one day. I was a waiter at Orlando's top restaurant. I mean, the nice one that people like to go to. Top of the Mark, I think it was called. And I was serving this table, and they were discussing Republican politics. And in my shy way, I interjected into their conversation. What happened to be Martin Anderson with guests. And so when I got out of college, I was immediately offered a job with United States Senator Edward Gurney's staff. He was a senior senator of Florida. So I worked with Ed Gurney on his staff out of Tallahassee. I ran the northern Florida, 32, I covered 32 of Florida's 67 counties. And did that for almost 4 years. Now, unfortunately, Ed Gurney's chief of staff was indicted and convicted of bribery. And then they went after the senator. He was found innocent, but that destroyed his senatorial career. So I resigned. Well, I got hired by Orlando's mayor to be his chief of staff, the administrative assistant to the mayor and council is what it was called. I loved that job. I truly did, and I was good at it. I was good at it until he found out I was gay. Then got booted. And I decided, I don't want to, this was the Anita Bryant period, and the anti-gay this, that. And I said, I'm leaving. I paid off the bills I had. I had $200 in my pocket, and I went to San Francisco. And I started all over. I was Republican at the time. I no longer am. It was a different Republican Party then. So I started my own business. I spent hours and hours at San Francisco Library learning about art. And I opened an art gallery. And it became highly successful. It was right in the middle of the Castro, and the Castro was the center of the gay universe at the time. And I was right in the middle of it. And it was exciting. Oh, God, it was exciting. And then I met Paul. Soon after, Harvey Milk was assassinated. And I ran for his seat and nearly won. as a Republican, gay Republican at that. I'm glad I didn't win because of things that happened later. But I got noticed, and I was hired by the San Francisco Chamber to be their Director of Governmental Affairs, government again. And I did that for almost 2 years. But I really got tired of the political aspect of the chamber, and I decided I'm going to find something else. And so I got into banking, Crocker National Bank, and worked myself up to assistant vice president there. And from there, I went to First Nationwide Bank and became vice president there. In both of them, I was responsible for things like purchasing, telecommunications, interior stuff, not the banking side. So that's the two of those careers. Third, I started with the art gallery that I had in San Francisco. And I named it after my mother. It was called the Gallery Gloria Jean. The Gloria Jean is my mother's name, because I thought it had a nice twang to it, and fit San Francisco, and certainly fit the Castro, which it did. And when Paul and I moved to Placerville, I opened up another art gallery. And then when we moved here, Paul and I opened the Emporium, what's called the Emporium at Portsmouth, huge antique mall, or an antique store. And I did all the back office. He knew the antiques. I knew how to run the business and in the internals. We had a ball. So that's my entrepreneur side. Now I can laugh at a lot of things, but the one thing that always makes me laugh is animated conversations with my friends. I love laughing. I think laughing is one of the best emotions a human can have, other than love. It's just a wonderful release, and I look forward to being with friends. And I have friends like Blake Mason. We laugh, and it's with friends that you tend to, all the it's not the inhibitions totally go, but something opens up with close friends that I think it's that you feel safe. That is the most refreshing thing to me. A good rendition of our national anthem will make me cry. Paul called me a crybaby. I mean, because we would watch sports and they'd start with but if it's a good rendition of the national anthem, I cry. Ave Maria, I cry. Because I remember as a child, the first funeral I had to go to was two of my friends. They were brothers. They drowned in the lake, and they played Ave Maria, and that's always stuck in my mind. That it's a blessing for those who are leaving us, and a blessing for those who remain. So. Now, are there some other things? Once in a while, Marine Corps hymn. When I work on, we have a memorial fund for Paul that's through Main Street, Portsmouth, and Bloom. And we have 2 events a year. The first one's coming up this May 21st. And it's a in-person silent auction, wine, hors d'oeuvres, lots of fun. This year it's going to be at the Lofts. The second is a fundraiser through the Sauda Foundation, and he has a permanent fund with the Sauda Foundation, and it's raised up in the mid 5 figures so far, and that all benefits Main Street, and it's totally for the beautification of downtown Portsmouth. So I love being with friends, and I'll take any opportunity as long as I'm physically capable of doing so. What would I advise? It's doing what I did, what you did, take a risk. Going into the Marine Corps was a risk for me, majorly. People coming out and working and going to college at the same time is a risk. Going to trade school is a risk because you don't know how successful you're going to be. The wisdom I would get is accept taking a risk.